couldn't identify. Dr. Webb was our chief researcher, Rodriguez explained. Before the Vorthek came, he was working on adaptive terraforming technologies. After they came, he found a very different application for his work. They entered the facility, and Zara immediately noticed the smell, ozone, and something else, something organic but wrong. The walls were lined with complex machinery humming at frequencies that made her teeth ache. The Vorthek first attacked us 8 months ago, Webb began, his voice clinical and detached. A small force, maybe 100 ships. They expected us to surrender or die. Instead, we captured their technology. He led them to a chamber where pieces of Vorthek equipment were integrated with human machinery in ways that looked almost organic. The Vorthek were a unified species, not just culturally, but biologically. They shared a form of quantum entanglement at the cellular level. It's what made them so effective as a military force. They could coordinate across vast distances instantaneously. Kethvar studied the equipment with growing alarm. That's impossible. Biological quantum entanglement has been theoretical for millennia. Not theoretical, Webb corrected, just beyond the understanding of most species. But humans have always been good at finding practical applications for impossible theories. Rodriguez took over the explanation. When the Vorthek attacked, we realized we couldn't fight them conventionally. They had superior numbers, technology, and firepower. But we had something they didn't expect: adaptability. They moved to another chamber where holographic displays showed complex molecular structures. Dr. Webb discovered that the Vorthek's quantum entanglement could be corrupted. A virus, essentially, but one that operated on quantum frequencies rather than biological ones. You created a quantum virus? Zara asked, horrified by the implications. We created a solution, Rodriguez said firmly. The Vorthek came back 6 months ago with their full fleet. 2,000 ships, ready to make an example of our colony. They surrounded our system and began their typical psychological warfare. Broadcasts showing what they'd done to other human colonies, threats about what they'd do to our children. Webb activated a holographic display showing the battle. They didn't know we'd spent 4 months preparing. Every colonist, every child, every elderly person had been working on different aspects of the project. We'd turned our entire settlement into a weapon. The display showed the Vorthek fleet approaching New Terra. Then, in the span of minutes, something extraordinary happened. The Vorthek ships began to simply stop. One by one, their engines went dark, their weapons powered down, their communications fell silent. The quantum virus spread through their biological network, Webb explained. Not destructive, initially. It simply disconnected them. Severed the quantum entanglement that bound their species together. That should have weakened them, not destroyed them, Kethvar observed. Rodriguez's expression darkened. You're right. But humans don't just solve problems. We solve them permanently. The disconnection was just the first stage. The holographic display changed, showing molecular structures breaking down at an accelerated rate. Once severed from their quantum network, individual Vorthek couldn't maintain their cellular cohesion. They began to dissolve at the molecular level. Within hours, every Vorthek in their fleet had simply ceased to exist. Zara felt sick. The quantum entanglement connected their entire species across the galaxy. Yes, Webb said quietly. The virus spread through their quantum network to every Vorthek in existence. 17 star systems, 50 billion individuals, all connected by the same biological quantum field that we had learned to corrupt. You committed genocide, Kethvar whispered, his scales turning a deep, shocked blue. We defended ourselves, Rodriguez replied without emotion. The Vorthek had made it clear that humanity's only choices were submission or extinction. We chose a third option. Zara struggled to process what she was hearing. But the scale, the entire species, was the result of their own evolutionary advantage turning into a fatal vulnerability. Webb finished. If they had been individuals like most species, The virus would have affected only those directly exposed, but their quantum entanglement made them, effectively, a single organism spread across multiple star systems. They moved to a final chamber, where a single piece of equipment hummed quietly in the center of the room. It looked deceptively simple, a crystalline structure surrounded by human-made electronics. "This is the quantum resonance generator," Rodriguez explained. "The device that transmitted the virus into the Vorthak network. It took every bit of power our colony could generate and nearly burned out our fusion reactors." "And you're keeping it active because?" Zara asked. "Because we're not the only human colony out here," Rodriguez said simply. "There are others, scattered across the galaxy, most of them in territories controlled by species that see humans as potential threats, if they decide to follow the Vorthak's example." The implication hit Zara like a physical blow. "You've weaponized quantum biology. You can target any species with quantum entanglement properties. About 40% of known galactic species, Webb confirmed, including several that sit on the Galactic Council." Cathfar backed away from the device. This changes everything. The balance of power in the galaxy was already unbalanced," Rodriguez interrupted. "Humans were the new species, the ones without territory or established rights. Every major power saw us as either servants or obstacles to be removed. The Vorthak were just the first to act on it." She walked to a window overlooking the colony, where children played in streets that had been built over mass graves. "We didn't want this. We came out here to farm, to mine, to build something new and peaceful. But when survival was the only option, we did what humans have always done. We adapted. What happens now?" Zara asked. Rodriguez turned back to them, and Zara saw the weight of impossible decisions in her eyes. "Now you go back to the Galactic Council and tell them what you found. You tell them that the Vorthak are gone because they threatened human children, and that any species that makes the same mistake will face the same consequences." "That's a threat against the entire galaxy," Cathfar said. "That's a warning," Rodriguez corrected. "Humans don't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to conquer anyone or impose our will on other species. We just want to be left alone to build our lives and raise our children. But if anyone tries to wipe us out—" She gestured to the device humming quietly in its chamber. "Well, the Vorthak thought they ruled half the galaxy too." As they prepared to leave New Terra, Zara realized that her investigation had answered one question but created a dozen others. The Vorthak were gone, destroyed by their own biological advantages, turned against them by a species they had underestimated. But the larger question, what would happen when the galaxy learned that humans possessed the ability to commit genocide with a single device, remained unanswered. During the journey back to Galactic Council space, Cathfar spent most of his time in his quarters, composing reports that he deleted and rewrote dozens of times. Zara understood his dilemma. How do you tell the galaxy's most powerful civilizations that the newest species had just demonstrated the ability to wipe them out completely? "What will you put in your report?" Cathfar finally asked her. Zara considered her words carefully. "The truth. That the Vorthak are gone because they chose to threaten human survival. That humans possess capabilities we didn't know about. And that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy needs to reconsider how it treats the species from the little blue planet on the edge of nowhere. And if the Council decides that humans are too dangerous to coexist with." Zara thought about the children playing in the streets of New Terra, about Captain Rodriguez's quiet determination, about Dr. Webb's terrible brilliance. She thought about humanity's long history of survival against impossible odds. "Then they'll learn what the Vorthak learned," she said finally. "That when you threaten humans, you don't get to choose the consequences." As the Harmony's Edge approached the Council station, Zara prepared her report with the knowledge that it would change galactic politics forever. The age of underestimating humanity was over. The question now was whether the galaxy would choose cooperation or learn the hard way why the Vorthak were no more. The silence, 3 months had passed since the galaxy received the most shocking news in recorded history. The Vorthak Empire, rulers of 17 star systems and terror of the Outer Rim for over 4 centuries, had simply vanished. Not defeated in battle, not conquered by another power, not slowly declining over decades. Gone. Overnight. As if they had never existed at all. Commander Zara Chen stood at the observation deck of the investigation vessel Harmony's Edge, watching the stars through reinforced transparent aluminum. Her reflection stared back, showing a woman in her 30s with short black hair, sharp eyes, and the bearing of someone who had seen too much in too little time. As the lead human representative in the Joint Galactic Council investigation, she carried the weight of answering questions that seemed to have no answers. "The energy readings are still off the charts," came a voice behind her. Kethvar, her Zentari partner, approached with his characteristic measured steps. His blue-scaled skin shimmered under the ship's artificial lighting, and his 4 arms gestured in complex patterns that Zara had learned to interpret as deep concern. Whatever happened to the Vorthak, it left scars in space itself. Zara turned from the viewport. "Scars in space don't make an entire species disappear, Kethvar." The Vorthak had over 50 billion citizens across their worlds. Their military alone numbered in the hundreds of millions. You don't just lose that many people without a trace. The Zentari's head tilted, his large eyes blinking slowly. Unless they were never lost at all. Unless they were transformed, or relocated, or destroyed so completely that not even atoms remained, Zara finished grimly. She had been thinking the same thing, but hearing it spoken aloud made it seem more real and more impossible at the same time. The bridge communicator crackled to life. "Commander Chen, Captain Kethvar, please report to the bridge. We found something." They moved quickly through the corridors of the multi-species vessel. The Harmony's Edge was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built by the Galactic Council specifically for missions requiring multiple species expertise. Human technology provided the faster-than-light drives. Zentari sensors offered unparalleled detection capabilities, and Krillian computers processed data at speeds that defied comprehension. On the bridge, Captain Torres, a veteran of the human colonial fleet, stood over a holographic display that showed a 3-dimensional map of local space. Red markers indicated the former positions of Vorthak installations, all now showing as empty space. But there was something new. A single green marker, pulsing steadily. "What are we looking at?" Zara asked. "Life signs," Torres replied, his weathered face serious. "A human colony. New Terra. Established about 2 years ago. It's deep in what used to be Vorthak space." Kethvar's scales rippled with surprise. Impossible. The Vorthak would never have allowed human expansion into their territory. They considered humans, what was their term? Infestation to be cleansed. "That's what makes this interesting," Torres continued. "According to our records, New Terra went dark 6 months ago. No communications, no trade ships, no distress signals. We assumed the Vorthak had wiped them out like they did to the other colonies." Zara studied the holographic display. The colony was positioned almost perfectly in the center of what had been the Vorthak Empire. If anyone had witnessed what happened to the Vorthak, it would be the colonists of New Terra. Assuming any of them were still alive. "Set course for New Terra," she ordered. "Maximum speed." The journey took 18 hours. During that time, Zara reviewed everything they knew about the Vorthak disappearance. 3 months ago, Vorthak communication networks had gone silent simultaneously across all 17 systems. Trade routes that had been regularly patrolled by Vorthak warships became empty space. Diplomatic channels that had carried the Empire's demands and threats for centuries suddenly carried nothing but static. The first investigation teams had found empty space where Vorthak fleets should have been. Planets that had housed billions of Vorthak citizens showed no signs of life, but also no signs of destruction. Cities stood intact but abandoned. Starships floated in orbit, their crews simply gone. It was as if the entire Vortex species had decided to step out of reality for a moment and forgotten to step back in. Approaching New Terra, announced the ship's eye. Colony appears intact, detecting multiple human life signs. Zara felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Relief that humans had survived in the heart of Vortex space. Apprehension about what they might have seen or done to survive. The colony was larger than expected. What should have been a small agricultural settlement had grown into a proper town, with industrial facilities, defensive installations, and what appeared to be a starship construction yard. The colonists had been busy in their isolation. "They're hailing us," reported the communications officer. On screen, the view screen flickered to life, showing a woman in her 40s with graying hair and eyes that held secrets. She wore simple colonial clothing, but her posture suggested military training. "This is Captain Elena Rodriguez of New Terra Colony. Welcome to our little corner of the galaxy, though I suspect you're not here for a social visit. Captain Rodriguez, I'm Commander Chen of the Galactic Council Investigation Team. We're here about the Vortex." Rodriguez's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. "The Vortex. Yes, I imagine that would bring investigators eventually. You'll want to come down and talk in person. There's a lot to explain." As their shuttle descended through New Terra's atmosphere, Zara noticed things that didn't make sense for a 2-year-old colony. The defensive installations were too sophisticated, the population too large, the infrastructure too developed. This wasn't a colony that had been struggling to survive. This was a colony that had been preparing for war. They landed in a well-maintained spaceport where Captain Rodriguez waited with a small group of colonists. As Zara and Cathvar disembarked, she noticed that everyone carried themselves like veterans. These weren't farmers and miners who had accidentally found themselves in hostile territory. These were soldiers who had chosen to make their stand here. "Captain Rodriguez," Zara began, "we need to know what happened to the Vortex." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I figured you would. But first, let me ask you something, Commander. In all your investigation, have you found any evidence of a battle? Any debris fields, energy weapon signatures, signs of orbital bombardment?" "No," Zora admitted. "That's what makes this so puzzling. The Vortex didn't fight anyone. They just disappeared." "They didn't disappear," Rodriguez said quietly. "They were removed. Efficiently, completely, and with minimal collateral damage. The question isn't what happened to them. The question is how a species that conquered half the galaxy could be eliminated by 5,000 human colonists with mining equipment and agricultural drones." Cathvar's scales paled to a light blue. "You're saying that humans, destroyed the entire Vortex Empire?" Rodriguez looked up at the sky, where the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening atmosphere. "I'm saying that when you corner a species that evolved on a planet where everything tries to kill you from the moment you're born, and when you threaten not just them but their children, you discover that humans have a very different definition of acceptable casualties than most species." She turned back to them, and Zara saw something in the woman's eyes that made her blood run cold. It wasn't madness or rage. It was the calm certainty of someone who had done what needed to be done and would do it again without hesitation. "The Vortex made a mistake," Rodriguez continued. "They thought we were just another species to be conquered. They didn't understand that on Earth, we don't have natural predators because we became the predator. They didn't realize that every children's story we tell, every game we play, every movie we watch, is about the underdog finding a way to win against impossible odds." "What did you do?" Zara whispered. Rodriguez smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "We did what humans do best. We turned their own strength against them. And tomorrow, I'll show you exactly how 5,000 colonists with hand tools and determination can make an empire that ruled for 4 centuries simply cease to exist." As night fell over New Terra, Zara found herself wondering if the Galactic Council had sent her here to investigate a mystery or to witness the birth of something far more terrifying than the Vortex had ever been. The truth unveiled. The next morning, Captain Rodriguez led Zora and Kethvar to a facility that hadn't been visible from orbit. Built into the mountainside and shielded from sensors, it looked like a combination laboratory, factory, and command center. The scale of it suggested months or even years of preparation. "Before we go inside," Rodriguez said, stopping at the entrance, "I need you to understand something. What happened to the Vorthak wasn't planned. It wasn't revenge or conquest. It was survival, pure and simple. But the methods we used, they're going to change how the galaxy sees humanity forever." Dr. Marcus Webb met them at the entrance, a tall, thin man with the intense focus of a scientist who had seen his theories become terrible reality. He wore a lab coat stained with substances Zora